Okay. Good morning, students. I couldn't take my class yesterday because of the technical glitch. There was no internet in the department yesterday for a short time. That is the reason why I couldn't take the class. And so today we'll start with this class, which I'll start as more and more attendees come in. So first of all, I just want a confirmation. If somebody can let me know in the chat box whether you can hear me or not. In the chat box, if you people can hear me, please write down. So if you can hear, please reply in the chat box because I'm unmuted. Just waiting for a few more students to join. And then we begin. So I'm going to go off the camera now. So good afternoon. So this is going to be the one of the last lectures of general embryology. And I hope you can all hear me. So that's it. Let me see how many 130 have joined. I just want to ask if there are any BDS students also in this group. If there are any BDS students, because I hope they have also got the link because they were also supposed to join this class. So today we are going to finish, I'm going to finish the general embryology today. I'll try to simplify it as much as I can because we are doing it in phases, the embryology classes. I'm also trying to keep in touch with one of your classmates so that in case you have any problem, she can reply back and let me know that if there is any problem in the audio or the video, because now I'm doing it from my house. Let me just wait for a few more minutes for students to join in. Okay. So today I'll be discussing certain features like folding of the embryo, twinning, you've all heard about twinning, and the time frame, that's a developmental sequence, what happens between the first 3 months, the next 3 months, and the last 3 months, that we divide as the first trimester, the second trimester, and the third trimester. And what are the birth defects and what are the agents causing these birth defects? So we start with folding of the embryo. Now let's see what we understand by folding of the embryo. So this is the objective, folding of the embryo. So the folding of the embryo takes place around the 3rd week of gestation. Till now what we had done is, we had done the embryo as a ball of cells having the inner cell mass and an outer cell mass. The inner cell mass is the one which formed the embryonic formed an embryonic disc, and the outer cell mass is the one which formed the membranes. That's the extra embryonic component. Now look at this picture. If you look at this picture, this is a picture, a scanning picture of a developing embryo at the 3rd week of gestation. The dark white that you see is the embryonic disc. It looks like a disc. It's a flattened disc with a groove in the center. It has a groove in the center. This low part of this black thing that you see, this is the primitive pit. It's just a flattened disc, and this is going to form an embryo, and this embryo is going to give rise to a baby, and the baby is going to grow and form an adult. And these membranes that you see are actually part of the amniotic cavity, the chorion. So these are the extra embryonic membranes. Now let's see what happens to this disc. So at 3rd week, we have the trilaminar disc, where we have all the germ cells forming. This is recap of what you have done: the ectoderm, the endoderm, and the mesoderm. So we have all 3 germ layers coming at the same time at the 3rd week of gestation. Now let's see what happens further. How does this embryo fold, or it has to form into a cylindrical structure? Because a human body is not an open disc. It's a cylindrical structure which has a posterior part and an anterior part. It has a dorsal part and a ventral part. The ventral part is where we have our anterior thoracic wall, the anterior abdominal wall of the trunk part, and the posterior part is where we have our back. So this embryo that you see now, the disc is folded in such a way that we are able to see the posterior part of this embryonic disc, which is now beginning to fold. It has not folded yet. If you look at this, this is the posterior tube. The neurulation is formation of the neural tube. So posteriorly, we had the formation of the neural tube. This anterior part, this is the opening part, cranial part. Opening is called the anterior neural pore. Posterior part opening is called the posterior neuropore. And these swellings that you see are the somites developing from the para-axial mesoderm. Please remember these structures very well, because we have only 3 germ layers, which are ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Mesoderm forms the para-axial mesoderm, the lateral plate mesoderm laterally, and between the two is the intermediate mesoderm. Dorsally, there is a tube which is going to form the neural tube. Ventrally, there is a tube which is going to form the gut tube. So now let's see how it happens. So the folding of embryo occurs in 2 planes. A median plane like this, going from the center. So the disc is it's going to form a folding in the center. What is it? What does it mean? That means a plate. Just if all of you here listening to me, if you can just hold a piece of paper, now that you are not there with me, or I'll try to see if I can just switch on the video and just show you. supposing this is the embryology book, this is, or I get a piece of paper, just a minute. I get a piece of paper. This is a piece of paper. If I want to fold it in the median plane, what will happen? What is happening? It's forming a cylinder. I hope you have understood this part. So this is called a median fold, which is forming a tubular structure, a cylindrical structure, and this cylindrical structure is going to form the body. The part which is lying on the posterior side is the dorsal side. The part which is on the anterior side is the ventral side of this cylindrical body. So this folding, how has it happened? It has happened in the median plane. Now, if I want this tube now to fold again, I want it to fold. It's a plate, so it's a stiff paper. I want to fold it. What is happening? It's forming a C-shaped structure. And how is this folding taking place? The folding is taking place in the horizontal or the transverse plane. I hope you are able to understand that. So it's forming a transverse plane. So we are having a fold, one in the median plane and one in the horizontal plane. So the median plane, it's going to form a cylindrical tubular structure. So it's forming a body. The body walls are forming. So these folds which are going to come from either end are called the lateral body folds. And let's see what happens. Folding of the, so this is the body, it will fold, and as it folds, these two foldings which are coming from the sides, which are going to come and close it ventrally, are called the lateral body folds. They are called the lateral body folds, and we have this part is called the horizontal fold, folding in the median plane. So we have two parts now. So folding of the sides of the embryo produces the right and left lateral folds. So this one which is coming to fold the embryo ventrally is forming the lateral body wall. And the fold towards the median plane, rolling the edges of the embryo disc ventrally, forming a cylindrical embryo. Okay, so the embryo was just is a flattened disc. This is the neural tube. This is the embryo proper. This is the yolk sac which is lying. I'll come to these diagrams later and explain to you what happens, and then we can go back to see them again. So this is the right and left lateral fold which have formed, and as a result, what is happening with this median fold coming a horizontal fold, we are having the cephalocaudal fold also happening, in which we have a head fold and a tail fold. So we have a head fold and a tail fold, and we have two lateral folds. So what is happening is the part of the endoderm gets incorporated into the embryonic proper. So as it comes inside, it's coming into the embryon proper. This is the secondary yolk sac. The secondary yolk sac enters the embryo and it will form the gut tube. This forms the gut tube. The part which is in front will form the foregut. The part which is in the center will form the midgut, and the posterior part will form the tail fold, will form the hindgut. From the hindgut, a diverticulum enters the connecting stalk, which we call as the allantois. It's called as the allantois. So there is a folding, a craniocaudal folding, which forms the head fold and the tail fold, and a lateral folding which forms the cylindrical shape of the body. So structures which were lying in the cranial part would come and lie on the ventral part of the embryo. Like the heart used to be the most proximal part or the most cranial part of the embryo, has come to lie on the ventral surface of the embryo, and you can see how the heart forms out here. So this is going to form in the upper part of the thoracic cavity. I have not discussed about the body cavities yet. I'll do that subsequently. So here we have a coelomic cavity, which I'll discuss later. Now look at this portion. Because of the fusion of the lateral folds, what has happened? This connecting stalk comes and lies on the ventral wall of the abdomen, and the connection between the ventral wall of the abdomen and the mother is going to form the connecting stalk, which is going to form the umbilical region, or we say the umbilical cord. So in this umbilical cord, what lies? The connection between the yolk sac and the gut tube, which is, it regresses, it forms the vitello-intestinal duct. So this will reduce this circular structure. You can see this ring. It has the allantois and it has mesoderm out here. The extra embryonic mesoderm out here, we call it the Wharton's jelly. It's a myxomatous tissue, so it's called the Wharton's jelly. This is all that comprises of the umbilical cord. When I did the placenta with this, I did a bit about this, talked about it. So this is the connection between the midgut and yolk sac, is called the omphallomesenteric duct, or we call the vitello-intestinal duct. This is called the, it then gradually, as the fetus grows, it degenerates, it disappears, the duct, just leaving a remnant, a scar tissue, which is the umbilicus later on. But if it is patent, it can form a leaking fistula from the umbilicus. So if we take a section of this part of the embryo, this part would be the midgut. Anything cranially will be the foregut, and caudally would be the hindgut, or we call it the cloacal region. So now I'll just revise what we did in these two diagrams, because these two diagrams are the diagrams from Langman embryology. And if you look at this, the upper part of this cavity is the amniotic cavity. This lower cavity is the primitive yolk sac. Okay. So we have a amniotic cavity, we have a chorionic cavity which is outside, and this is the yolk sac, which is going to form the definitive or the secondary yolk sac. It's going to form the secondary yolk sac. The mesoderm is going to form the splanchnoporheic mesoderm and the somatopleuric mesoderm. The splanchnoporheic mesoderm is going to come around the gut tube, and the somatopleuric is going to come onto the body wall, divides it into that way. What happens when the embryo folds? It's forming the tail fold and the head fold. This is the craniocaudal folding. Look at this folding. As it is forming, the heart was here cranially. Now it has come to the ventral surface. The amnion is also going to come. This yolk sac is degenerating, and what is happening? This space is narrowing. This is the vitelline duct, which is narrowing, and cranially out here near the gut tube, where the foregut, this is the gut tube, the foregut part, the cranial most part of the foregut, what is it going to form? It's going to form the stomodium. There's a membrane out here which is called the stomodium, and posteriorly this part is going to call the proctodium. The stomodium is going to form the oral orifice, and this is going to form the anal orifice down. So we have two orifices out here, and of course we'll be talking about this area when we do urogenital system and the anal canal, the hindgut. It's not as simple as I've made it. So here now look at the baby here on sagittal sections. You can see that first this stalk is very wide, then gradually it narrows and it has become a more circumscribed area with definitive structures in it. Now we have, look at this. This is the neural tube. This is the paraaxial mesoderm, the intermediate mesoderm, the lateral plate mesoderm. Now the lateral plate mesoderm divides into a splanchnopluric, as I told you, and a somatopleuric. The splanchnopluric is going to come along the body, along the gut tube. The somatopleura will be going onto the body wall. Look at this, amniotic cavity is going, because I had told you the amniotic cavity and the chorionic cavity finally will fuse. The gut tube is going inside. Look at this picture very carefully. Now look at this, a cavity is formed on the side of this gut tube. Look at this. This is such a big opening out here. Then what happens out here? On this side you can see, yahan par, there is a cavity which is being formed, and gradually what happens is this end and this end will fuse, closing the ventral surface. If it remains open, what will happen? All the gut tube will be outside. It will be outside and we'll call it an omphalocele. If the body wall doesn't fuse, it's a ventral body wall defect. That means all the structures of the abdominal cavity will be exposed to the exterior. Now look at this. So this has a cavity. Two fluid-filled cavities are lying just lateral to this gut tube, and these will be the ones which will be giving rise to the cavities of the body, which will be forming the pleural and the peritoneal cavities and the pericardial cavities. The division of that we'll be discussing when we will be doing the diaphragm development and the thorax, with thorax. Now look at this gut tube. It is connected to the posterior body wall by a layer of mesentery. Now look at this, a new term coming up, a fold of peritoneum, which we call as the dorsal mesentery. Ventrally also there is a ventral mesentery, but it usually disappears. It's there only for a short part. So we do have a ventral mesentery, but at this section side there is no ventral mesentery. At this, it's at the upper part near the liver. The liver develops in the ventral mesentery, but dorsal mesentery is there throughout. So as the body is folding, so the lateral foldings would be fusing the body wall. So this is the way it looks like. Very small fetus, that's at around 3rd week. Now it's a larger fetus with a big connecting stalk, and this is the part of the tail fold. This is the hind limbs, this is the forebud limbs, and these are the pharyngeal arches. So it's almost becoming a shape which is going to change into a fetal shape. So these are all happening in the first 3 months of intrauterine life. And so the body wall is formed by 4 separate folds: a head fold, that's the cephalic fold, a tail fold, which is the caudal fold, a right lateral and a left lateral fold, which would be giving its form. And this is the umbilical cord, and where it is connecting, it is the umbilicus, and this is going to get connected to the placenta for nourishment till the baby is born. You can see the size of the head. Look at the size of the head, much larger when we compare it with the body. Now let's go down. So the body wall formation is taking place by, it forms the cephalic fold, it gives rise to the thoracic and epigastric wall, which would be giving rise to the sternum, the pericardium. As I told you, it will be giving you the thoracic walls and the abdominal walls. So the closure of this lateral folds will form the lateral abdominal wall, and tail folds are actually forming the part of the, we'll not go into too much of detail about this, we'll do them later, that they are the ones which will be giving rise to the lower part of the body, that is the anal canal and the bladder, urinary bladder, and the external genitalia. So this was all about body folds. So we have to understand the take home messages that there are two body folds, a cranial and a caudal body fold, and two lateral body folds, which are giving the form and the shape of the embryo. Instead of a disc, now it is having a form, a cylindrical shape with a head end and a tail end. Head end would have the brain, tail end would be having the low part of the spinal cord, and limb buds coming, lower limb buds coming. So now we come to twinning. So twins can be of two types. One is called a dizygotic twin and the other is called a monozygotic twin. So in a dizygotic twin, what happens? There are two ovumes and they are separately fertilized by two sperms simultaneously. So at one time, if there are two ovules which are released during a cycle and they can get fertilized by two sperms, we have two embryos forming, and these two embryos would be exactly like siblings. They would not have the same genetic imprint. It can be a boy, girl, it can be of the same sex. It will be like siblings. So they have their own chorionic cavity. They have their own placenta. Sometimes the chorionic cavity fuses because of the constraint of shape, but otherwise they have their own nourishment, their own placenta, their own space. They do not share anything and they do not share the same genetic material because they belong to two different ovaries and two different sperms. So this is called a dizygotic twin or fraternal twins. And then we have monozygotic twins. It's the same ovum and the same sperm. When it fuse, in fact, the inner cell mass and the outer cell mass divide into two blastocysts. When it divides into two blastocysts, we have two embryos forming. They would be monozygotic. The genetic impression is same. These are the identical twins. Identical twins, they have the same fingerprints. They have the same looks. The genetic imprinting is same. So they have their own if it is like this, when they are forming two chorionic cavities, they have their own chorionic cavities and placenta, but on the genetic imprint is completely similar to each other, and they are always of the same sex. It's never that they are of the different sex. Sometimes in one of this blastocysts, the cells, they just become separate, they heap out and they separate out into two corners of this blastocyst cavity. As a result, what happens? They form two identical developing embryos with the amniotic cavity and the yolk sacs lying in a single chorionic cavity. And they start also developing their own nourishment from this chorionic cavity with a thin partition. Sometimes a thin partition just separating them to form two cotyledons. But what happens is sometimes if the one of them grows too much, the other one doesn't grow that much. It doesn't get its nourishment. If only one of this, it all depends upon the trophoblast. The trophoblast, which is able to grow and give more nourishment to, if it doesn't give it uniform nourishment to both the fetus, then one overgrows and the other might degenerate and disappear. So we can have only one viable twin, viable fetus from this kind of a pregnancy, but sometimes both are also formed. Sometimes it's only here at this inner cell mass that they form an indentation, and this indentation is in such a way that it immediately forms two of these embryonic discs, and these two embryonic discs, because this is all multipotent, pluripotent cells, so they can give rise to a single embryo. And so we have two similar embryos coming up, and these kind of embryos usually are the conjoined twins because it's the same. Sometimes they are joined either by the thorax or by the head or by the body. So it all depends. They can be fused. Like you can see these two, they have a craniophagus. They have got the two heads joined, and these were the most famous twins, Jaga and Kalia, who got operated. But of course, one has not survived. It was a big news in the news that they were operated in All India Institute. and then they went back after staying in the hospital for quite some time. But these kind of twins, of course, when they are connected by the brain, when they have a brain connection, it is a bit difficult to separate them. But of course, you would have heard or seen pictures of these, how they can be fused, but these kind of can be separated out surgically. Where they are joined by the head, it's a bit difficult. If the brain is same, there can be neurological deficits. Now let's go to the developmental time sequence. What happens at 4 weeks? The pharyngeal arches develop, the heart becomes functional. So an ultrasound, you can see the heart beats. And in fact, that gives you a definitive sign of pregnancy when the heart is functional. In a gestational sac, the ultrasonologist is able to see the heartbeat, gives a confirmatory evidence that it is a viable pregnancy which would continue. So, and then there are appearance of limb buds, the forebud and the fore limb bud and the hind limb bud. Formation of the neural tube also happens. 5th week it increases, lower limb buds appear. Regional differences of upper limb have started taking place. You can see the digits are taking place and the eyes have become more obvious instead of just an otic. Here this is the otic pit will give rise to the ear, and the optic pit gives rise to the eye, in which there's an optic placard and there's a lens placard. These give rise to the lens. So we have the eye development, the ear development, and regional limb differentiations are taking place. 7th week, ossification of upper limb takes place. All regions of the limbs are visible by 8th week. Now you can see this connecting stalk, the umbilical stalk, and this is the hernia along with it, a vital intestinal omphallus with it. And you can see the auricles also would get their shape. So we say that the first 3 months, we have the fertilization. This part is the germinal phase. 3 to 8 weeks is the embryonic period, and later on we call it the fetal period. And the risk of birth defects are most common seen between the 3 to 8 weeks of gestation. So this is a chart which is there in Langman. You can see this chart and it shows you what are the developmental sequences which are taking place for each and every organ of the body. So this is what it is. This is called the scale of the fetal growth. We have this kind of representations we have in our museum. So when you come back, we'll be taking you to a tour to the museum and showing you all the fetuses that we have. We've got these. Unfortunately, it's too early that you people have gone back home again. But I'm sure once the peak is over, you would be back and we will be able to show you all these fetuses and all the collections that we have in our museum. And next week I'll do a class with you for about history of medicine and anatomy, and that also will show you in the museum. Now let's talk about this clinical relevance of erythroblastosis fetalis. This is a condition in which if the mother is Rh negative and the father is Rh positive, most likely the fetus can be Rh positive. So when the maternal blood goes into the fetal blood circulation, it generates anti-Rh antibodies, and these anti-Rh antibodies start acting against the fetal RBCs and causes agglutination of the fetal Rh positive cells and leads to a condition which is called as erythroblastosis fetalis. These kind of abnormalities happen with blood group mismatch, and of course they will be teaching you more in detail about this in physiology. So we talk about congenital anomalies or birth defects. So in one of the practicals during neural tube defect, you were shown some neural tube defects. So we'll just briefly, I'll go through them. So any birth defect or congenital anomaly is a structural abnormality of any type that is present at birth. It can be genetic, it can be environmental, it can be a multifactorial inheritance, and the incidence is about 6% in 2 years old and 8% in 5-year-old. So if we look at this, multifactorial, which has more than one factor responsible, is about 55%, environmental is 15%, and genetic is 30%. So now let's see what are the risk factors. Mostly it's a folic acid deficiency in women, pregnant women, which causes birth defects, especially the neural tube defects. So the predisposing factors are diabetes, obesity, hyperthermia, drugs, substance abuse, alcohol, and certain viral infections like toxoplasmosis, rubella, cytomegalovirus, and HIV, and hepatitis. All these are infections which cross the placental barrier. So certain drugs cross the placental barrier, cause effects on the developing fetus. So that is the reason why alcohols, nicotine, any kind of substance abuse should not be done during pregnancy. No pregnant mother should indulge in all this. So as doctors, you have to advise your patients, and some of them are genetic. If there is a genetic predisposition, 30% of them are genetic, are because of genetic conditions, and almost 80 genes have been found which are responsible for neural tube defects. While it might be less because mouse model experiments have shown almost 200. So what is it that we have to do as doctors? We have to know that there is an environmental gene reaction going on, and majority of neural tube defects can be prevented by giving folic acid supplementation. So any woman who wants to get pregnant before pregnancy should start taking folic acid, and during pregnancy should increase the dose of folic acid. It does cause helps in certain birth defects. So third week of development is the most sensitive period during fetal development, and these drugs are alcohol irradiation to the mother. They cause many congenital anomalies to the embryo, and the best part is at this time the mother is sometimes not even aware that she's pregnant. So when we say that it's the first 4 to 8 weeks, so if she's not aware, so by third week we have all the organogenesis setting in, she's not aware, so it does cause certain defects, and it might lead to an abortion, and the mother doesn't even realize that she conceived and she has aborted also. They do not continue. Then we'll talk about gastrulation. I hope you remember when we talked about the third week of gestation, I said that there is a important condition which takes place, which we call as, what do we call that as? Gastrulation, where the primitive streak appears. So when the primitive streak appears, it causes the formation of the germ layers. And these germ layers would give rise to the ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. If there is less gastrulation, because primitive streak is responsible for maintaining the caudal side of the development of the embryo. If there is regression, what happens? It will cause less of primitive streak on the lower part. So the lower part of the body will not develop properly. So there is loss of trunk and lower limb mesoderms, leading to vertebral defects. We call it the VATR. It's vertebral defects, anal atresia, tracheoesophageal fistula, and renal defects. And when there is a cardiovascular defect along with these, we call it a VATRal association. And if you look at this baby out here, lying down, you can see that it's a mermaid baby. It's called a mermaid baby. Both the limbs get fused. They are fused, and there is no anal orifice in these children because there is less mesoderm, and they are called. This is a condition called sirenomelia. This time for practical, we did put one of these fetuses for you. Of course, they are not compatible, but still they can be operated and treated with the advances in modern pediatric surgery. Sometimes there are, during the first few weeks, when we are having the right left orientation of the baby being formed, that is the time when we see that there is the right and left side is determined, the body axis is determined by the notochord, the primitive streak, and then with the primitive, if you remember, I had discussed about the nodal, and the nodal is responsible for secretion of 5-HT, and this maintains the left-sidedness of the body. So if there is any discrepancy in SHH and FGH8, it causes asymmetry. Everything which was supposed to be on the left side comes to the right side, and the right side goes to the left side. And when it is a complete inversion, it's called situs inversus. If one organ which is supposed to be on the right comes to the left, we call it heterotaxy. And the master gene for this is PTX2. So remember that much only. When there's too much of gastrulation, there's a big mass which is a multipotent cell because it's a part of the primitive streak, has a multilineage tumor containing all ecto, meso, and endodermal cells. So this is a sacrococcygeal tumor when it is on the caudal end, and these can be operated upon and the child can become okay. And of course, there are a number of genetic factors which have got a multifactorial inheritance. We will not be discussing these now because we have special classes for genetics, and we'll be having 5-6 classes in genetics in which we do all this with you. And you've done a lot of genetics in school also. So malformations can be divided as malformations which occur in 3rd to 8th week of gestation. That's during organogenesis. They result in partial or complete non-formation or alteration in normal structures. Like the first baby that you can see out here, the upper picture, what do you see? It has a breach in its lip. Sometimes the palate also has a hole in it. And these children have difficulty in feeding. They cannot speak properly also, but they can be cured by surgical methods. They can be cured by just stitching up the lips and the palate, so the child has no problem. There will be no functional deformity, and with good plastic surgery being done, there is no deformity also visible, so they become normal. There might be a nasal this thing in the voice because of the cleft palate, but otherwise everything becomes okay. So this is a cleft lip and a cleft palate. When we do the development of the palate and lip and face, you will be taught in detail how it develops. Then deformations. Due to mechanical forces that affect a part of the fetus over a long period. Example, Talipes equinovarus. These are club foots. That means when the child is inside the uterine cavity, there's amniotic cavity. If there's less of amniotic cavity, the baby is not able to move much. The feet get stuck in a position in such a way that it's called a club foot, or we say Talipes equinovarus, or a valgus deformity when it goes laterally. And these deformities are usually because of the mechanical forces. There's nothing wrong in the baby as such. It's only a mechanical defect which has happened, and they can be treated postnatally once the baby is born by giving them appropriate orthopedic measures. Orthopedic shoes can be made, and with massage and all, they become okay, and they are able to maintain their posture and gait. Now, what do we understand by syndrome? A group of anomalies that occur together. It's not only that one cleft lip has happened. Along with that, there are a number of other defects which are taking place in the body, then we call it a syndrome. And a disruption, this is something which is very unfortunate when it happens during pregnancy. It's a morphological change of the already formed structures due to exposure to destructive process. It can be a vascular accident. Vascular accident means there might be some vessel which has ruptured, leading to an intestinal atresia is degeneration. An amniotic band, a thin layer of the amniotic amnion, it forms a band kind of structure, and it comes and cuts off the fingers or the limbs. So that is also very commonly seen. A child, everything is all well formed, but because of the amniotic band and these tissues are very soft at that time, can lose a amputate a limb because of these kind of accidents which happen when the baby is in utero. So these are again the same. So the first 2 weeks I said are lethal, kill the embryo. So mother doesn't is not even aware. Organogenesis is between 3rd to 8th week, disrupt the major developmental anomalies, and they cause major congenital anomalies. But that doesn't mean later on it cannot happen. These at later on between 9th week to 9th month, what happens? Morphological and functional abnormalities are seen, particularly in the brain and the eye, because growth keeps on going on. So every time of the pregnancy is important, and the mothers have to be careful. Environmental factors which are responsible are, these are the infections which I had told you: rubella, toxoplasmosis, cytomegalovirus, herpes simplex, HIV, syphilis. Syphilis causes congenital deafness, mental retardation. All these are causing severe disability to these babies born. And these babies, when they are born, they don't become a liability, they become a liability to the family and also a social burden. So one has to see that the pregnancies of mothers go smooth so that they have healthy babies born to them. Ionizing radiations also, they cause a, they, then these were from experimental studies from, of course, the Hiroshima Nagasaki bomb blast gave babies which were born for 2-3 generations with anomalies. So one has to be very careful. They can have microcephaly, is a small head with little small brain, and spina bifida, cleft palate. All these can happen. Chemical agents like thalidomide. Thalidomide, I think most of you would have heard about thalidomide story, that a lot of women during their first trimester, they complain of vomiting, that's morning sickness. And then this was a drug which was prescribed very openly to mothers who were having headache and morning sickness. And they realized the woman who used to take thalidomide had babies born with limb defects, shortened limbs. There may not be any arm or forearm, just the digits coming up. So this kind of this was retrospectively they learned that thalidomide causes phocomelia where there are no limbs, and diphenylhydramine, which is anti-epileptic, phenytoin, that causes again syndromes. Fetal alcohol syndrome, tetracycline causes yellowish coloration of the bone and the teeth, and these don't go, they stay there. So aspirin, cocaine, all these, nicotine, all of them have very bad effects on the fetuses. Hormones like androgen, synthetic progesterone prevents abortion, causes masculinization of the female embryos. And when we say diethyl stilbestrol, that's an estrogen, causes malformation of the female reproductive system. Insulin also is used for treating diabetic mothers, can cause large for dead babies and congenital anomalies. So one has to be very careful while treating any pregnant woman. nutritional deficiency, one has to give good nutritious food to any pregnant mother. Heavy metal, organic mercury, all this, diabetes, hypothyroidism, they also cause defective babies. These are some of the cases which I have just shown here. These are the cases which have come to our fetal autopsy lab. We do a lot of fetal autopsies. And what is this? This is a fusion of the ventral body wall. There's a herniation of the midgut loop. Herniation. This is a physiological hernia, but it has not gone back. Covered by amnion. Omphalocele. So herniated viscera, liver, intestines, spleen, all that has come. And this is sometimes associated with cardiac defects. Gastroschisis is failure to close. This, if it doesn't close, the body wall is open, everything is open. See, you can see the heart out, the liver is also outside, the intestines are outside, everything is outside, and this is a midline defect. Look at this. It also has a cleft lip. The nose is also deformed. So everything, it's a complete midline defect. Gastroschisis. So I'll not go into the causes of these now. Anencephaly, when the cranial part of the neural tube doesn't develop. Why? Because the anterior neural tube fails to close. When it fails to close, the brain forms, but it has not closed, so it gets degenerated and the bones are not there. So it forms a fetus with no head. Meningocele, a huge meningoencephalocele, a huge protrusion of the brain and the meninges outside. This is also a baby from our fetal autopsy lab. And what you see out here, this is the neural tube, not closed at all. From top to bottom, it's an open neural tube. The neural tube is not there. It is, so what happens? Because the neural tube doesn't close, the vertebral columns also do not close because they cannot oppose each other because this is causing a problem. So they are open. So it's spina bifida with no skull bones out here. So the bone, the brain, the spinal cord, everything gets exposed. So they are actually degenerated nervous tissue. It's incompatible to life. But a small condition like this, where there is a small part where there is a defect in the fusion of the vertebral column, there is a protrusion of the meninges, then we can have these kind of babies can survive. So prenatal diagnosis are done by non-invasive techniques where maternal serums are examined, ultrasounds are done regularly, and invasive are amniocentesis and chorionic villus sampling and fetal blood sample. That's only during term. And we can detect, I think we'll have practicals on this, so it will become much easier for you to understand. We do have genetics practicals in which we do all this, because now in theory, if I keep telling you online, it may not be very interesting for you to understand. So we'll have some case scenarios and we'll do these with you. So this is just to show you how it happens. They are always guided, ultrasound guided. One cannot do it without understanding. So this is to see the needle going into the amniotic cavity, take out an amniotic fluid, and it's examined for any genetic defect. Here you just do a transvaginal, put in a scope, insert a probe and taking out a part of the chorion. This is the chorionic villus sampling. At least to give you the idea about the genetic material. So you can see that prenatal diagnosis can be determined by different level scannings. These are called level 1, level 2 scans, so that we know that the baby is growing normal, healthy, and we'll have a normal, healthy baby. Fetus during entry can receive treatment like fetal transfusion, medical treatment, surgery, stem cell transplantation, and gene therapy. These can be done. And I next are the amnion. I've already done this with you, so I will just give you some charts during your practical classes. So that's all for today. And if anybody has any question, can ask me. You want to ask anything? No? So the attendees. Okay, I'll just take random. I'll ask somebody. नहीं पता नहीं कौन है. Self-muted. Akash Yadav. Can you hear me? No. Okay. So, so that's for today. And we meet later when you come. So bye.